Hands where I can see them, now. Officer Kyle Brennan's voice cracked across the parking lot like a whip. That car's worth more than you make in a year. Whose is it? The man standing beside the silver Mercedes didn't flinch. He turned slowly, both hands rising to shoulder height, palms open, fingers spread. Everything by the book. It's mine, officer. The registration is in the glove compartment. I can show you if you'd like. I bet it is. Brennan stepped closer, one hand resting on his holster. Out here at 6 in the morning, nobody around, a man like you in a suit like that. You're gonna tell me you didn't take it? ID, now. The man reached slowly toward his inside jacket pocket, narrating every movement. I'm reaching for my wallet. It's in my left breast pocket. I'm going to use 2 fingers. He withdrew it the same way, held it out flat. Marcus Webb. The license was real. The address was a good one. Brennan barely looked at it. Could be fake. Brennan snatched the wallet, flipped it once, then tossed it onto the hood where it slid and dropped to the asphalt. The leather smacked the ground and splayed open. Cards spilled across the pavement. Pick it up, then put your hands on the car. Marcus looked down at his wallet on the ground. He didn't bend for it right away. He looked back at the officer, and in that pause, something passed across his face that wasn't fear. He counted. First violation, unlawful detention without reasonable suspicion. Second, an unreasonable search of his property. He bent, gathered his cards one by one, and stood. A delivery driver had slowed his van near the lot entrance, phone already up, filming through the open window with a grin. Get him, officer, the driver called out, laughing. A woman in workout clothes walking a small dog paused at the sidewalk, watched for a moment, gave a small approving nod, and kept moving like she'd seen justice in progress. And a man in a maintenance uniform near the building's side door took one look, lowered his eyes, and slipped back inside. He did not want to be a witness to anything. Marcus placed his hands flat on the warm hood of his own car. The metal was already heating in the early sun. He felt the grit under his palms. He kept counting. He had no idea. Because the black man, Officer Kyle Brennan, had just thrown to the hood of his own Mercedes, was the newly appointed United States Attorney for the district. And his name was about to be unveiled in bronze letters on the federal building 20 feet behind them. And in 47 minutes, every person in that parking lot would understand exactly what had just happened here. They just didn't know it yet. But this story doesn't start here. Rewind 11 hours to the night before, in a quiet house on the east side of the city, where Marcus Webb sat at his kitchen table reading the same paragraph for the 4th time. Marcus Webb was 48 years old. For 19 of those years, he had been a federal prosecutor, and 3 weeks ago, the President of the United States had signed the appointment that made him the United States Attorney for the district, the chief federal law enforcement officer for 4 million people. The Senate had confirmed him on a Tuesday. The ceremony to unveil his name on the building had been scheduled for this very morning, 8 o'clock sharp, which was why he'd driven in before dawn. He liked to walk an empty building before a big day. He liked the quiet. He had grown up 40 minutes from that building, in a neighborhood where his father drove a city bus for 31 years. Henry Webb never missed a shift, never raised his voice, and never once in 31 years was promoted past the route they handed him at 26. They've got their reasons, Henry used to say, in a voice that told his son the reasons weren't reasons at all. Henry had died of a stroke 6 years ago, 2 years before Marcus made deputy chief of the criminal division. He never saw it. On the shelf above Marcus's desk sat a single object he carried to every office he'd ever worked in. His father's transit badge, number 4471. Mounted in a small wooden frame Marcus had built himself in a high school shop class. He looked at it every morning. He looked at it that morning before he picked up his keys and drove downtown to walk the quiet building and have his name unveiled. That was all he intended to do that day. Arrive early, walk the halls, stand quietly while they pulled the cloth off the bronze, call his mother afterward, nothing more. Officer Kyle Brennan intended something too. Brennan was 36 and had worn the badge for 12 years. He was good-looking in the way that made recruitment posters, and in fact his face had been on one 3 years running. Officer of the Year, twice. The chief liked him. The union loved him. He had a way of talking to cameras that made the department look modern and clean. He also had a file. 9 civilian complaints in 12 years. Excessive force, twice. Unlawful search, 3 times. 4 complaints that all said, in different words, the same thing. That he stopped black men for existing in places he didn't think they belonged. Every complaint had been reviewed. Every complaint had been closed. The lieutenant who reviewed most of them had trained Brennan at the academy and called him one of the good ones. The system that produced Officer Kyle Brennan had also protected him, congratulated him, and handed him a commendation the same year 2 of those complaints were filed. So when Brennan rolled through the federal building's parking lot at 5:51 that morning and saw a black man in a tailored suit standing beside a silver Mercedes with his keys in his hand, he did not see the chief federal prosecutor of the district. He saw a story he had already decided was true. 41 minutes. "Spread your feet," Brennan said now, kicking lightly at Marcus's ankle. "You know the position. I'm sure you've been here before." "I haven't," Marcus said evenly. "But I know the position because I've spent 19 years reviewing what happens to people who are put in it." His voice never rose. He kept his palms flat. 3rd violation, he thought. Continued seizure with no developing basis. He kept the count clean and quiet, the way his father kept his route. "Talker," Brennan muttered. He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, running a plate. Possible stolen vehicle, occupant detained. Subjects giving me a story." He read off the plate. He didn't wait for the answer before he pulled Marcus's wrists behind his back. The cuffs clicked. Cold, tight. Let's let the detective sort out whose car it is. Across the lot, a second cruiser pulled in. Officer Dana Reyes had been on the force 4 years. She stepped out, took in the scene, the cuffed man, the suit, the Mercedes, the federal seal on the building behind them, and something tightened in her stomach. She knew that seal. She knew this lot was assigned parking for the U.S. Attorney's office. She walked over slowly. "Kyle," she said quietly, "what have you got?" "Stolen vehicle, resisting." Brennan didn't look at her. He doesn't look like he's resisting. He's a talker, worse. Brennan finally glanced at her. "Just make sure the report's clean. I've got this." Reyes looked at Marcus. Marcus looked back at her, calm, steady, saying nothing. She knew. She knew the way you know a thing you don't want to know. And she did what too many people do. She stepped back. "Your call," she said. And she hated the sound of it as it left her mouth. 33 minutes. Inside the federal building, a logistics coordinator named Priya Anand was setting up for the 8 o'clock ceremony. White folding chairs, a small podium, a bronze plaque under a black cloth mounted beside the main doors, bearing a name not yet revealed to the public. At 6:14, she stepped outside to check the sight lines for the press and saw, across the lot, a police officer pushing a handcuffed man toward a cruiser. She squinted. She recognized the suit. She had shaken that man's hand 4 days ago. She pulled out her phone and called the one person who needed to know first. 11 miles away, a phone buzzed on a nightstand. Renata Webb answered on the second ring. She was a federal magistrate judge, appointed to the bench long before her husband got his call from the president, by her own work, on her own record. She had been a prosecutor herself. She had handled men like the one cuffing her husband for 20 years. Renata, it's Priya. Something's wrong. There's a police officer in the lot. He has Marcus in handcuffs. Renata Webb did not gasp. She did not panic. She sat up, swung her feet to the floor, and reached for the legal pad she kept by the bed out of 2 decades of habit. "Are you filming?" she asked. "No." "Film it. Now. From where you are, badge number if you can see it, time-stamped. Do not approach, do not interrupt." Her voice was the calm of someone who had handled worse and knew exactly what to do. "I'm calling the chief and the press contact, who's already on the way for the ceremony. Documentation wins, Priya. Emotion loses. Evidence is everything. Film." Priya started filming. 26 minutes. Brennan had Marcus against the cruiser now. He leaned in close, the performance fully warmed up. "You know what your problem is. You think the suit fools people. It doesn't fool me." He was enjoying himself. He pulled out his own phone, one-handed, and snapped a photo of Marcus in cuffs against the car. "For the report," he said, smiling. He was not thinking about the report. He posted it to a group chat of officers with 3 laughing emojis and the caption, "Another genius who thinks he's somebody." He had no idea his career was now measured in minutes. Marcus stood with his cheek inches from the cruiser's roof and watched the building. He could see the black cloth over the plaque by the doors. He could see the white chairs. He said nothing. He had decided, somewhere in the last 10 minutes, exactly how this was going to go, and it had nothing to do with announcing who he was. Because the next man Kyle Brennan threw against a car would not be the U.S. attorney. The next man would be someone like his father, and his father had been told to spread his feet too on a night nobody filmed, by a system that closed the complaint. So he waited. 4th violation. 5th. He counted them like his father counted stops on a route nobody ever let him leave. 19 minutes. The dispatch radio crackled. "Unit running plate. That vehicle comes back registered to a Marcus H. Webb. No wants, no warrants. Vehicle is not stolen. Repeat, not stolen." Brennan keyed down without acknowledging it. He'd already committed. Backing out now meant admitting the whole thing was wrong. "Registration can be faked," he said, to no one. Reyes, standing a few feet away, heard the dispatch clear as day and looked at the asphalt. At that moment, 3 cars turned into the lot in sequence. The chief's black SUV, a local news van with its antenna already rising, and a sedan carrying the deputy chief of the criminal division, Marcus's own office, who had come early for his boss's ceremony and now sat frozen, staring through the windshield at the chief federal prosecutor of the district, bent over the hood of a patrol car in handcuffs. The chief got out first. He was 60, gray, and had been a cop for 35 years. He took 3 steps, saw the man in cuffs, saw the suit, saw the building, and his face did a thing faces do when the floor tilts. "Brennan." The chief's voice was very quiet. "What did you do?" "Sir, stolen vehicle," the subject was. "Take the cuffs off." The chief was already moving. "Take them off right now." 8 minutes. Brennan, confused, still smiling slightly, half laughed. "Sir, with respect, this guy's giving me a whole story about that man," the chief said. and now his voice carried across the entire lot, across the white chairs and the cloth-covered plaque and the news camera that had just begun to roll. Is the United States Attorney for this district. You have his name on a federal building 20 feet behind you. They're unveiling it in 8 minutes. The color drained from Kyle Brennan's face. He looked at the building. He looked at the black cloth by the doors. He looked at the man he had thrown against the car, the man who was now slowly, calmly, turning around to face him as the cuffs came loose. Marcus rolled his shoulders once. He bent and picked his wallet up off the asphalt, gathered the cards, slid it back into his pocket. Then he straightened his cuffs. He looked at Brennan, and when he spoke, his voice was no louder than it had been the entire morning. You ran my plate 11 minutes ago and it came back clean. You heard it. I heard it. The officer beside you heard it. He nodded toward Reyes. You kept me in those cuffs anyway. So let me tell you what's behind that cloth. He gestured without hurry at the plaque. My name. I'm Marcus Webb, United States Attorney for this district. As of 3 weeks ago, my office oversees federal civil rights prosecutions in every county you patrol. Pattern or practice investigations into police departments. Color of law violations. He paused. Do you know what those are? Brennan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. They're the cases I bring against officers who do exactly what you did this morning. Marcus let that land. I've prosecuted them for 19 years. Now I run them. 8 words, and Brennan stumbled back a half-step even to the side of his own cruiser. At 8 o'clock, they pulled the cloth off the plaque. The bronze caught the morning sun. Marcus H. Webb, United States Attorney. The press camera got all of it, the plaque, and 40 feet away. An officer sitting on the curb with his head in his hands while 2 supervisors stood over him. The reckoning did not arrive all at once. It arrived the way these things really do, in a cascade across every part of Kyle Brennan's life. By that afternoon, he was on administrative leave. Badge and weapon surrendered to the chief personally. The dispatch recording, the plate coming back clean 11 minutes before he uncuffed his detainee, was pulled and preserved by the end of the day. The photo he'd posted to the officers' group chat, the cuffed man and the 3 laughing emojis, was screenshotted by someone in that chat who had finally had enough. And it reached the Civil Rights Division of the very office Marcus now led. The Federal Review came within the week. Not of Brennan alone, of the 9 complaints stretching back 12 years, and the lieutenant who had closed them, and the pattern they formed when you finally laid them side by side. The thing the system had refused to see for over a decade became, in the span of a single morning, impossible to look away from. The lieutenant who'd called Brennan one of the good ones was placed on leave pending the federal pattern or practice inquiry. The department came under a consent decree negotiated by Marcus's office. Kyle Brennan was indicted on a federal civil rights charge. He accepted a plea. He was barred permanently from law enforcement. The recruitment posters with his face came down quietly one Thursday, and no one replaced them. That evening, the local news asked Marcus Webb for a statement. He stood at the small podium they'd set up for the ceremony, the bronze plaque with his name behind him, and he did not speak about himself. I want to be careful about why I'm telling this story, he began, because the reason matters. I'm telling it not because of what happened to me. I had every advantage a person can have in that parking lot, and I will be fine. I'm telling it because of what would have happened to almost anyone else. He looked into the camera. If I had not happened to be the person whose name was about to go on that building, this would have been just another stop that ended in a clean report and a closed complaint. That is the part that should trouble you. Not that it happened to a U.S. attorney, that it happens constantly to people whose names will never be unveiled on anything, and the system records it as nothing at all. He paused. The lot was silent. Someone asked me today why I didn't just say who I was the moment those cuffs came out. I thought about it, and I decided that if I have to produce a federal title to be treated like a citizen, then the protection isn't real. It's a privilege, and privilege that protects only the powerful is the absence of justice, not the presence of it. The law cannot mean one thing for the man whose name is on the building and another thing for the man who cleans it. When authority is used as a weapon against the people it was sworn to protect, the law must answer. That is my job now. I intend to do it. He stepped back from the podium. He did not raise a fist. He did not smile for the camera. He just gathered his notes and went to find his wife. In the months that followed, the lives in that parking lot bent in different directions. Kyle Brennan served his sentence and left the state. He works now in a job that does not give him authority over anyone, which is the only sentence that ever mattered. The lieutenant who closed 9 complaints retired before the inquiry concluded, his pension contested, his name attached permanently to a federal report that schools of policing now assign to recruits as a lesson in how systems fail. Renata Webb went back to her courtroom the next morning and heard a full docket, because the work does not stop, and she would not let it. Priya Anand, who filmed when a judge told her to film, was offered and accepted a position in victim services at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Her footage is part of the record. And Officer Dana Reyes, who heard the plate come back clean and stepped back anyway, did not get to keep stepping back. She requested a transfer to the department's new Community Oversight Unit, the one created under the consent decree. She told a reporter, months later, that the worst sound she had ever heard was her own voice saying your call. She said she transferred, so she would never have to say it again. It was not absolution. It was a beginning. The delivery driver who filmed and laughed deleted the video that night. Nobody made him. He just couldn't watch it twice. Late that first evening, Marcus sat with Renata on their back porch as the sun went down behind the trees. His father's transit badge sat on the table between them, number 4471, where he'd set it down without quite knowing why. Renata reached over and put her hand on his. They had talked about this before, the two of them, many times, in the language of people who have spent their whole lives inside it. He'd have liked seeing your name on that building, Renata said. He'd have liked it. Marcus turned the little frame so the badge faced the fading light. But he'd have asked me the same thing the reporter did. Why didn't you just tell the officer who you were? What would you have told him? Marcus was quiet for a while. The streetlights came on down the block, one by one. That the day I have to tell them who I am, he said finally, is the day they've already decided who they think I am. And I don't want to win that way. I want to change the rule that makes it a question at all. Renata squeezed his hand. Down the street, a screen door opened and shut. Somewhere, a dog barked twice and went quiet. That's a long road, she said softly. It is. Marcus looked at his father's badge, and then out at the dark settling over the neighborhood his father had driven for 31 years, without complaint and without promotion. Until the rule changes, he said, someone has to be standing here, watching, refusing to call it normal. They sat together as the last light went out of the sky. Two people who knew the morning had changed something, and knew it had not changed enough, and had made their peace long ago with the distance between the two. If this story moved something in you, anger, recognition, or just the quiet need to sit with it for a minute, then send it to someone who needs to see it. Because stories like this one don't travel on their own. We carry them. The man whose name goes on the building will always be fine. This was never about him. It was about everyone in that parking lot whose name never gets unveiled on anything, who gets the clean report and the closed complaint and the silence after. So let me ask you something, and I'd like you to answer it from your own life. Have you ever watched something wrong happen in front of you and heard yourself say your call, or nothing at all, and wished later that you had been the one to step forward instead of back? Tell me about it below. Tell me what you'd do differently. Because justice isn't only what happens at the podium. It's what happens in the parking lot in the 8 minutes before anyone important arrives, when the only person watching is you.